War. War never changes. Except on May 14th, 2025, when Tom finally released the biggest update for Nuclearcraft yet. Molten salt reactors are finally back and better than ever. And just in time too, because in these next 100 days, we're going to be dealing with a true nuclear fallout. Radiation, feral ghouls, and burnt off ozone layers. This is the craziest nuclear winter we've ever faced. But it's also the best version of Nuclearcraft we've ever had. So with it, can I build a fully functioning, self-reliant, molten salt reactor-powered nuclear fallout bunker in just 100 days? Or will it take a little bit longer? For now, everything seems peaceful. Calm. I don't like it. I've only got a few days until all of that changes forever. So, my very first goal for now is to prepare for the end of the world. That all comes later though. I definitely have to get a move on here. I have to find a new place to call my home. For me, and my new little friends. I have to say, this is already a pretty awesome start here. Chickens might be one of my favorite animals. I think I'd honestly own chickens in real life here, if I didn't live in a crappy little apartment in the middle of Los Angeles. Yeah, feels bad. Oh, and speaking of feels bad, I decide I need to find a home before I start leading these chickens around. So for now, I breed these ones up and I kill the parents. Yeah. And after setting those chickens down their revenge arc, I start to look for a decent place to get my base started. This cherry blossom biome, I must admit, truly looks gorgeous. This is a biome so plenty cherry forest, but I must say, I'm really glad that they added this biome to vanilla. Mojang does get some things right. Sometimes. Speaking of getting things right, I decided to chop down some trees in one cut using a mod called Tree Harvester. And I'll be using this wood to make my first little micro build. A small chicken pen. I'm not even 10 minutes into this playthrough, and already I gotta say, this is a pretty solid start. Because I have a ton of chickens, and I shouldn't have to worry about food. For now. As the sun sets on our first day in this beautiful world, I almost forget that there is a horrible nuclear explosion coming my way. Now, speaking of which, let's talk about that explosion. I don't know exactly when it's coming. It could be tonight, in fact. It could even be on day 100. But all I know is it's definitely coming. And when it does, it means I'm not going to be able to come back to the surface up here. So it's a good thing that we found this little cave here right in the side of this cliff. And it looks like it even has its own built-in moat out front. This great start just keeps on getting better and better. I set out some torches in this cave for the night, and I even set up some fences here to make a little makeshift door. I want to play it extra safe for the night. Well, I guess this is it, my first little home. Let's set down a crafting table and get our first stone pick. I do decide to carve up a little bit more room for myself because it is a tiny bit cramped. Next up, we get our first furnace and get rid of the evidence of our chicken war crimes. I mean, make dinner, yeah. I also decide to cut out the little bridge here a block short so that no mobs can just walk right over the moat. With all of this extra safety and even a little bit of food, I'm feeling pretty good. I decide to go grab our first iron of this playthrough. I start to craft up our very first stone hoe. Like all hoes, I know it won't last forever, but that's okay. Because now we finally have our first iron pick and our sword. At the end of day 1, we might have the best start I've ever had. And just as the sun starts to set out on the beautiful day, I turn around and head immediately back down deeper into the cave. No vitamin D for me, thanks. Soon, we get a decent amount of 36 iron into our furnace, and we still have enough daylight to get started on my favorite part of Minecraft. Once again, all my loyal viewers, you guys already know. Nuclear reactors are a ton of fun, and mining might calm down my anxiety, but nothing beats good old farming. I set out some potatoes and set out some carrots right next to them. Someone in my comments once reminded me that the best way to get vanilla crops to grow just a little bit faster is to actually have them adjacent to different types of crops. As a farmer, I can't tell you how much I love that comment. And I'm going to be sure to do this and put a little bit more love into all my rows of crops from now on. Just before the sun sets, I take a quick detour. I head out looking for some clay. Since we are playing with Pam's Harvestcraft, the best mod in Minecraft, we are going to need some of this clay to make our utensils. Then we take a short walk back home, walking through this biome, and I have to say, it doesn't get old. All of the colors and the animals roaming around, I kind of feel like Snow White here. Not the live action one though. Okay, moving on to something a little less controversial. Let's cook up our clay, because I want to get right into Harvestcraft tonight. For those sad, tragic few who do not know what Pam's Harvestcraft is, first of all, what are you doing with your lives? And second, it's an amazing farming and cooking mod that adds a ton of food to Minecraft. For example, we can now cook up just vanilla chicken eggs and make some scrambled eggs. Not as good as Sunny Side Up, but it's definitely pretty close. And just in case somebody wants to beat me up for that opinion, I now have a full set of iron gear, so hopefully I can absorb some of the blows. Feeling a bit more brave with my new iron armor, now I head out into the night and start to do some farming by moonlight as I get the wheat seeds in place. Yes, I know I said I was going to do Harvestcraft, and wheat is a vanilla crop, but I am going to need it to get some sheep or maybe even some cows. Also, I do have to get some sugarcane, which will be super useful in Nuclearcraft later on. I set out some torches tonight and let this baby farm get to growing. As much as I love farming, and I will definitely have to do another farming video, for now, I have to remember that all of this could blow up in nuclear smoke tomorrow, so I can't get myself too invested. I have to head back into the mines, because down here is where my real Nuclearcraft future will be. Speaking of Nuclearcraft, let's talk about that too. For this mod pack, I'm going with the purest version of Nuclearcraft. In the past, I've used Mekanisms generators to massively speed up the process of Nuclearcraft. We have none of that this time. I'm going to be showing you guys how to play Nuclearcraft with no other tech mods to get in the way. And this all starts by going down deeper and getting some redstone. That's right, the very first machine in Nuclearcraft needs you to go all the way down to the redstone layer. We can't complain too much though, because pretty soon we get our first diamonds, our first redstone, and hey, looks like we got a little bit of uranium fever too. In fact, we get the fever so bad that I actually stay down here for a whole day, grinding up all of these great Nuclearcraft ores. Of course, I can't do this too much. Remember, now I have no idea what day the bombs will drop, so I definitely need to keep on working here. But as I come back to the surface, on the sunset of day 4, I see no nuclear hellscape has ravaged the land. Yet. So let's continue with our naive, blissful work. This includes seeing these trees and bushes from Harvestcraft. Also, these cows, all of which would be a huge boost to my food in my bunker. But my inventory is telling me that I'm not going to have to worry about those just yet. We get back home, trip and fall right into our moat, but after that, we do get our ores cooking, starting with the uranium. That's right, in Nuclearcraft, uranium will even be your very first source of power, as crazy as that sounds. But in order for us to use it, we'll need to cook up some lead first. So I craft up a total of 4 furnaces and start our first little industrial processing area. Hey, I know it's small, but everything starts somewhere. Speaking of getting started, let's get into what you guys really came for this video to see. With just some stone, lead, and a little bit of redstone, we make our first Nuclearcraft machine, a decay generator. In fact, we've gotten enough lead so that we can make a few decay generators, 6 to be exact, because this is the most effective way to use them. So here is my first little tip for all of you future Nuclearcraft engineers. Make a full case of decay generators around one empty block, just like this. Then, in the center, you place a full block of a radioactive element. And yes, uranium is the perfect choice. with this block of uranium completely surrounded by the decay generators, we can now see that they're slowly drawing away the natural decaying radiation from the uranium. Good, because now we're getting our very first RF, which is electricity. But it's also bad, because we get our very first bit of radiation going on down in the old Geiger counter. But nanораds like these shouldn't be anything too concerning. Just a little bit of cancer, that's all. I'm not too worried about that for right now. I'm way too busy being excited that our decay generators now have over 1,000 RF. This means we're getting our first little steps of nuclearcraft underway. Quickly, the uranium does decay down into lead. That's the shortest half-life I've ever heard of, but never mind that, I guess. As you probably would expect, decay generators are super inefficient. They're definitely an early game way to get power, and we're just going to have to deal with the fact that it's a huge waste of good uranium. But hopefully, not for much longer. Speaking of getting better power sources, let's try to progress just a little bit more towards our second nuclearcraft machine. This is the Manufactory. It's my first true love and one of the core components of nuclearcraft. And the long list of things that it can do for you goes on and on. But for now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's just wait until we have a little bit more power so that we can actually use it. After spending some quality time with my clucks, we burn through another block of uranium. Like I said, this is not a good use of this stuff, but eventually it will make the reactors and all the RF they produce just that much sweeter in the endgame. So let's get to that as quickly as we can. With the Manufactory plugged in, we don't have too much power to mess around with, so we need to make sure we do everything right here and go for the most important things first. So let's start by crushing up some coal. Almost every machine in nuclearcraft needs to crush up some coal, so let's get as much as our power will let us. Which, as you could guess, isn't that much. But hey, not all bad. But hey, it's not all bad though, because we just barely managed to get our 4 graphite, which is coal that's been in the Manufactory twice. With this, we could start to think about our new power sources. Our 2 options are RTGs or maybe solar panels. Now, solar panels are definitely better in my opinion, but do remember guys, we won't have the sunlight forever, so we can't get too invested down this path. At the same time, in order to get solar panels, we're going to need quartz. So yeah, Nuclearcraft was not designed to be a quick and easy mod by any means. Let's head down into the mines and grab some obsidian and try to rush those solar panels. I get down into the cave where I'm going to set down my portal and get the jump scare of my life. Yes, dear viewer, I did in fact pee my pants. Just a little bit with that one. But of course that's nothing too unusual for the captain, so I continue right along and get the portal set down in no time. So, speaking of scary, off to the Nether we go. Now, I do have some food and iron armor, but honestly, I kinda don't like to mess around with the Nether until I have full diamond armor. So I definitely do not want to stick around here for any longer than I have to. Luckily, we spawn in a pretty safe area where we can get some bone blocks, some glowstone, which we're definitely going to need for later. Sure enough, we do find some quartz too. I don't want to be down here for any longer than I need to, but the more quartz we have, the more it will definitely help out. So I carefully work around the lava, and yes, do set myself on fire a little bit, but I do manage to find some mushrooms, which are going to be super key. And of course, I do get a little more quartz too, but I'm not going to risk it any more than I need to, so let's get out of here. Back in the cool of the cave, quickly realize that one chest just isn't going to cut it. Now, I do love my hoarder, super messy, cramped up chest life, but I guess for you weirdos who do like being organized, I'm going to craft up 2 more chests really quickly and load it up with all of the gear I got out of the Nether. We are going to have to do a quick little mine run here and grab some more uranium, but first, just give me one little second here to do something for myself. One of my favorite dishes, IRL and in Harvestcraft, is chicken pot pie. This is awesome, and it's a really good first dish to try in Harvestcraft because you really only need vanilla ingredients. Chicken, wheat, carrots, and potatoes. All we have to do is get our bakeware, which we can make out of clay, And now we just have to make some dough. Harvestcraft does need a little bit more love and some extra work, but this is nothing too crazy. We just need to get ourselves some water, which is pretty easy, and then half of that water we have to put in a pot to get some salt. We ground up the wheat in a mortar and pestle, like the medieval peasants we are. Then we combine all of these ingredients to get our dough. Then in bakeware, we put the chicken, carrots, the taters, and, just like Mama used to make, nah, I'm kidding. My mom used the microwave for all my food. And I wouldn't have it any other way, thank you very much. Now our tummies are filled once again, and we yearn for the mines. While we're down here, uranium is the big thing that we're going to be after, and I think I actually spend a whole day down here. Not that I'm going to show you guys all of this footage, by the way. In most of my videos, I usually try to cut down most of the boring footage of me just mining. And now don't get me wrong here, mining is like the reason I play Minecraft. Still, I know what you guys really want to see. You want to see me back in the lab, doing some Nuclearcraft fun. So let's skip to that. I pop my head up top, and I see some cows running around, which is good. We'll definitely need these later. For now though, we head back home as the sun is heading down, and once again, we're back into the lab where we start to cook up all that uranium and some pink magnesium as well. We load up the decay generators, and soon we get about 7,000 RF, which isn't bad at all. Now we load up another block of uranium. However, I see that this one immediately turns into a block of 238. This might be interesting. I grab this quickly before it turns into lead, and I load a different block of uranium instead. See, here's the thing. A block of pure 238 can be used to make another early game energy source, the RTG. However, we're still going to have to make some graphite bars, so for now we're going to have to set this thing off and worry about this later. For right now, I get the manufactory in place, and I decide to continue to head down a different path. See, the truth is, I know you guys will probably not be stuck underground if you want to play Nuclearcraft yourself. So I do want to show you guys how to use solar panels, since this is probably the better route to go down in Nuclearcraft. So we start to crush up some quartz, which at least I thought this was going to be a good idea. Well, I can tell you something that's definitely a smart idea, making a pile, which is basically the Nuclearcraft version of a battery, and it's pretty much essential if you plan on using solar power. Also, I try to use thorium in the decay generators as a power source, but well, this was definitely not a great idea. We also cook up our first 3 graphite bars. Once we get enough RF to run the manufactory again, we actually get a 4th graphite bar. Finally, after all the struggles, we have it. Our very first RTG. The lowly, humble little uranium RTG only makes 1 RF per tick, which is, well, it's statistically the lowest amount of RF you could possibly make. But it's free, it requires no fuel, and it runs forever. From now on, every single tick in this entire playthrough, I will be slowly building up power, forever. Look, it's not much, I admit, but things like this definitely help out a lot in the early game. However, we can now craft up something that makes 5 RF per tick, as now we quickly craft up our first basic solar panel. Now, obviously, this gives you more power. I think you guys can do math there. And it's honestly cheaper to make, too. It doesn't need a block of uranium. But, well, there are some obvious downsides to making solar panels. For example, it doesn't work at night like this. All this being said, if you think about it, even this early on in Nuclearcraft, we technically have 3 power sources: the decay generator, solar, and the RTG. This is how I choose to begin my Nuclearcraft journey. The next part of our journey is, well, not being able to use this pile to power our manufactory. See, we need to set up the pile to give power as an outlet into our machines. To do this, we need a multi-tool. And the multi-tool is, well, it will be by far the most complex thing I've ever made in this playthrough yet, and it needs a ton of mixed alloys. Enter the alloy furnace, the next step in our progression. Now, if only we had enough graphite to craft it up. But sadly, we're gonna have to wait till morning. Sure enough, at the start of day 10, we have two good things. One is we craft up our first alloy furnace. And two, well, the nukes didn't drop today. I was kind of worried that day 10 might be the big one, but so far, so good. Now it's time to get our alloy furnace running. But obviously, this does need a power supply of its own. And yes, we are pretty strapped on power right now. So I decided to craft up some new solar panels, which mean we have to crush up some coal and some quartz in our manufactory, which yes, also does require its own power. Welcome to Nuclearcraft. But sure enough, we quickly get our next solar panel, and we still have plenty of daylight to spare. So we set it out right here in the sun and get the alloy furnace charging up. Step 1, 1 iron and 3 coal. Combine this together, and soon enough we get our very first steel. Not bad, but still we have a lot of work to go here. Of course, we crush up even more quartz and craft up even more solar panels, and this should make all this go much faster. Another 2 solar panels coming up, and since we need the steel so bad, I set both of them on the alloy furnace. You'll see why that's important soon. But first, we need steel to make our cables, and we're going to be using Mekanisms cables and pipes because, let's face it, they're just so good. This will let us set up baby's first power station here, as we can now set out this small power grid. If we put all of our solar panels on the grid, all of the power will be drawn into the pile, charging it up much faster. We do craft up some bronze by mixing copper with tin, the classic recipe, and get a little bit closer to that multi-tool. Next up, we need to combine a diamond to graphite dust to make some hard carbon. Expensive, but well worth it. And finally, we combine the steel with some boron. Easy, right? Well, I had to spend a whole day farming more boron since I didn't grab enough boron on all of my other mining runs. Look, there are a ton of ores in Nuclearcraft, and I can't be expected to grab all of them all at once. Either way, soon we have enough boron bars to combine with our steel, and now we have our very first ferroboron, and oh boy, will we need a ton of this stuff. But for now, I have enough to finally make our multi-tool, an important tool for a ton of Nuclearcraft shenanigans, such as setting out our pile. We can use the multi-tool to tell the pile to push power out on one of the sides, where we can put either cables or just put machines that need power. Now we can collect all of the power from our solar panels and our RTG and run them into the pile. Then we can set up these sides to be outputs where we place our machines. The beginnings of a true little nuclear lab. And all of this is running on clean energy. It's enough to bring a radioactive tear to a man's eye. Oh, sorry, what was that? No, I'm not crying. That's just, my tear ducts melting from all the radiation poisoning. That's all. Of course, we can always upscale. Never enough upscaling. And we start to add as many solar panels as we can. With this amount of power, I feel that I can start to use the manufactory to double our iron. The keyword here is I felt. But for now, it is working out. And as the solar panels hum along, it's time to collect all the resources that we'll need for the next phase of our Nuclearcraft fun. Though all the mining does give me quite a little appetite, and we have to head back home to get to our farm. We're going to be cooking up some cheeky pies, and a little bit of watermelon too. While I'm here, I see that we not only have a good amount of this iron grit, but also, more importantly, we have a ton of power. And it's nighttime. This is kind of amazing news. The early game of Nuclearcraft for us is going pretty smoothly here. And with no world-ending nightmare-level apocalypse events happening, we've gotten a pretty solid start going on here. Not so nice for our poor little chickie friends here. Look, if you guys wanted to live, you shouldn't have tasted so finger-licking good. Now, not only do we have our chicken pies, but we're going to be adding lithium to the ferroboron in the alloy furnace. And soon, we're going to unlock true Nuclearcraft perfection. Tough alloy. Boys, tough alloy is the reason I play Nuclearcraft. This stuff is basically like man-made diamonds. It lets you unlock even more Nuclearcraft machines, like the separator. But on top of that, it lets us make gear and armor with the stats of diamonds. And it's also jet black, so yeah, pretty cool. Sorry, I don't mean to get too carried away here, but gotta be honest with you guys, I love this stuff. Anyway, back to work here. This separator is another big advancement in Nuclearcraft, because now we can use it to enrich our uranium and get far more power out of it. If you give this thing at least 10 uranium and a lot of power and a lot of time, it will make something magical. In the meantime though, I see that our pile is still charging up with more power while powering all three of these machines. Of course, during the night, this will start to drain out. So there's nothing wrong with me adding a few more panels and getting even more RF charging on top of all this. But I'm not going to be setting myself up for failure. Surprisingly, I'm actually going to try to play smart here a little bit. I'm not going to continue to just pump out a bunch of solar panels. I think we all know, no spoilers, that pretty soon these will become useless. With this uranium enriched, we can easily make a block of 238 and make another RTG. A small but a permanent power source that is completely dark proof, or night proof. It's an underground energy source. You guys know what I'm trying to say here. And so, right around this point, I start to get a new little idea. See, I really have no idea when the end of the world will hit. But in the meantime, I don't really care. My goal is very clear. I'm going to be using these solar panels to process up all the materials I need to eventually make a lot of RTGs. Hopefully, I can get something like 50 RTGs, and then we should have enough power to be able to make the reactor in no time at all. However, I still want to hedge my bets. I want to make an important preparation in the meantime as I craft up a brand new shiny bit of gear out of my tough alloy. But I restrain myself. I actually don't put it on just yet, because I need it to be at full durability before my next plan. With the 4 RTGs, I should be able to keep our charge even at night, and I start to craft up some radiation shielding. Yep, you heard me right. With some iron, coal, and lead, we get our very first light radiation shielding, which should probably be pretty safe for me to do things like handle uranium ore in Nuclearcraft. But we're going to go the extra step here. We're going to upgrade to medium shields, since we all know there's going to be even more radiation in this playthrough than a normal one. This just needs some sugarcane in a manufactory, which makes bioplastic. I told you we need this stuff. But also, we need some ferroboron again. And that means we need to stop everything and do some more mining. Again. Sadly, no matter how smart I tried to be, nothing could prepare me for this. As I finally start to dig up to the surface, right on day 15, sure enough, it finally happens. Nothing. We're totally fine. I got you guys there. You thought the bombs were probably going to fall today, didn't you? Hey, everybody, look at this dumb viewer over here. What an idiot. Sorry, what was I doing? All right, we finally get our first 3 pieces of medium radiation shielding. Now, we could go all the way and get some heavy shielding, but this takes a lot more powerful machines to craft up all the expensive resources, and I just don't have the time to wait around with absolutely no protection. Speaking of waiting around, I feel like this manufactory officially does have enough power, yet still it's just going too slow. So I craft up another one and get it ready to help us make another medium shield. And soon, we're adding this shielding to our pants to protect the captain's booty. With a full set of radiation protection, we're easily down to 0 rads on the Geiger counter. A good, but of course, I'm not sure how this will hold out in a true nuclear winter. The good news is our factory is pumping right along, making not only more enriched uranium for those RTGs, but also more components eventually for our reactor. We should probably try to finish that definitely before the fallout hits. So we also decide to make 2 more alloy furnaces. This means we can make steel in the first, then add boron to make ferroboron in the second, finally adding lithium to make tough alloy in the last one. That's the core ingredient in making the reactor. Oh, and also, I should probably tell you guys, when I say reactor, I do mean a solid fuel fission reactor. You have to make a solid fuel reactor before you can make the molten salt reactor. Also, I just kind of want to make a solid fuel reactor. It's pretty tough to skip it, but you'll see more about that even later. For now, let's just focus on making those RTGs. Looks like we have a total of 5 by day 16. I also decided to use wood in the traditional furnace to save up my coal. We're not going to have to worry too much about deforestation. Trust me. By that night, we have 6 RTGs. And pretty soon, we can add a 7th. This is good, but it still won't be nearly enough if we get forced underground today. So we have to keep up this good pace. Now we get 8. We're doing good, though it is still way short of our goal of 50. I do decide we're making some good progress here. I give myself a little break here and make a Harvestcraft juicer so I can turn watermelon into a refreshing drink. I think there might have been a little bit of graphite on my hands there. Still, gives it a nice coarse mouthfeel. I hate it. But I do love another RTG. I think this officially makes 9, which means we're actually out of room down here at the bottom. To be honest though, 9 RTGs is almost getting to a tipping point. If we had to, I feel like we might be able to survive off this, and I decide to switch my focus. Now, it's time to head out and try to get some better food options as we break down all of these shaded gardens, which let you collect Harvestcraft crops. In this version of Harvestcraft 1.12.2, there are 6 gardens, and each type of garden gives you a pretty good range of crops. But once we find these frosty gardens, it means that we'll get even more different types of crops. We want to do this because if we can get a good range of different types of crops, we'll be able to make a lot more recipes, and therefore cover a lot more of our nutrition as well. But also, if we're being totally honest here, I'm going to collect a lot of foods so that I can also make the foods that I just like. Which, hey, I think that's important too. We craft up a chest for all of these new foods. But, well, you won't be placing this up here next to all of our other chests. Nope. It's time to get smart here. This little temporary lab up here is great, but if we want to be safe from the bombs, we have to go deeper. Finally, I break out into this big open chamber deep in the earth. I have to admit, I'm kind of liking the look of this. It's big, and it should be able to hold a few reactors, but maybe more importantly, this rock outcropping right here is another natural moat that can keep all these ghouls away. So, here is where we're going to set down our chests and put all of our radiation-free fresh crops. This is the beginning of our true bunker base. The real Fallout bunker of my dreams. Or at least, that's what I thought at the time. The reality is pretty far away, and I have a lot of work to do first, including moving all the loot down into the new bunker. On the start of day 18, I get an idea. Whenever I build a bunker, or even just a regular mine shaft, the comments always tell me that I should make a staircase for easy access. And of course, no surprise, the comments are right. Well, almost always right. Now, we just have to get all these machines set down away from the explosions. Speaking of... Yeah, this creeper gets right up in my face. Not great. An omen to be sure. But hey, I can't be too upset. My Tough Alloy kit kept me safe. And as for my lab, I think I only lost an extra manufactory and 1 alloy furnace. Now, I don't love that, don't get me wrong, but at least it could have been so much worse. For example, I didn't lose a single RTG or a solar panel, so we can rebuild. But this time, we have to be even more careful. As I tear everything out of this temporary lab, I am going to get it ready to make even more RTGs down here in the bunker. I also decided to dig out and make this gap even bigger in the cave, so that no more creepers will be able to do this again. Now we head down into the bunker, where I immediately place all the machines. In fact, I'm so fast that I kind of make a booty cheeks looking setup here. Yeah, this is a big ugly right here. I quickly have to rethink it. Instead, I make a vertical wall of RTGs leading into the pile, but I can set all these machines up later. I can't get too distracted. For right now, I head back up top to the surface, and I start to break down the farm. We're gonna have to replant this down in the bunker. And of course, we're gonna have to relocate all of our loyal clucks too. I start to lead my whole herd over the bridge, and I just hope we don't lose any. Also, if you guys didn't already kind of get the vibe here, yes, I'm definitely starting to rush here. The lab, the farm, now I'm even rushing these chickens. The thing is, deep down in my heart, I have a really bad feeling about day 20. Although then again, I did have a bad feeling that day 10 would be the big one. Then day 15. Yeah, honestly, I'm just kind of like an American in the 1950s. I'm thinking the big one could be any day now. But the good news is, with every machine we get down here, every crop we stash away, and even every animal pen that we set up to collect our little chickies, our odds of survival get better and better. And I have to admit, once I see all these little chickies safe and sound, I am feeling a lot better too. In fact, this gave me an idea, and I head up once again, but this time not to get more of the base relocated. See, the thing is, if I can manage to get a cow and some dairy, well, this would be a true game changer. Now, I know I've seen a ton of cows before, but of course, whenever you need them, that's when they all disappear. Seriously, I hope day 20 isn't the big one, or else I'm pretty sure I'd be dead at this point. I stay out looking well into the night, but hey, at least... I get it. Hey, like, hey, at anyway, never mind. Finally, we do manage to get our cows. Now, we just need to lead them home. Unfortunately, I swear, getting back home always takes like 100 times longer than actually getting all the way out here. I don't know if I've ever been so anxious just trying to get cows back to my base. I have no choice but to go over this mountain and get home faster, and this is a real nightmare. But at the very end here, it turns out everything might be okay after all. Yes, it's day 20, but once again, no bombs. Now, I just need to get down this sheer cliff face and get back into my bunker. I'm close. I can even see where my farm plot used to be. I'm almost there. It looks like there's hope. But you guys already know what it means when I have hope. War never changes. That's what you're supposed to say whenever a nuke drops, right? Well, I guess we can't really ask anyone anymore. We definitely can't ask those poor cows. And honestly, you almost wouldn't be able to ask me. For now, my radiation shields is the only thing that saved me. Maybe. And as I look out into the direction of the nuclear blast, I see it. The nuclear wasteland starts to spread across the world. Trees are starting to burn up. Grass is being transformed right in front of my eyes into irradiated waste. Next, the radiation is so intense, there's no way my shielding could ever hope to save me. It only buys me time, and not much of it. I can't stay up here. Every second of this, my survival rate is crashing. I take one last look out on what was once a beautiful world, and then I say goodbye. I head down into the bunker. I pass this poor little dead chicken. Luckily, as I get deeper down, this one is okay, so the bunker works. It's not completely sealed. The radioactive particles are starting to flow down into my home, and the radiation is starting to rise. But I quickly try to seal up the entrance with some wood. Though it's not a true seal. The levels are still deadly down here, and they're starting to raise even higher. This is bad. The rads climb up to 20 millirads, and soon, these chickens will be in danger. I grab some eggs to hopefully make some new ones, because I don't know if I'll have time to save these ones. Once again, I know I'm going to have to break down the lab. I'm going to have to run. I decide to prioritize and get the most important things first. Unfortunately, there's one big problem. I wasn't able to move everything down, and I have to head back up to the surface. And as I do, the rads spike up to 96 millirads, and I can only endure this type of radiation for a few seconds. I can't even grab everything. I have to run deeper back into the mines. I start to dig my way somewhere, hopefully to somewhere that's safe, or at least a little bit safer. Luckily, the rads are now down to micro rads, and we are a little bit safer, but only for now. The radiation will manage to spread down into cracks and open vents a little bit down here, so I have to go far, far away just to be safe. Finally, we are now down to nanorads. I find myself in a new ravine. While I'm far from safe, at least I have a chance to just breathe and to take a short break down here. Still, I can't wait around for too long. I know that the mobs will start to spawn down in this cave, so I decide to choose this little smaller area to stay in. I wall it off to keep out all the Jehovah's Witness, and I open up a little bit more space for myself. I set down my basics. Crafting table, some chests, you know how it goes. More importantly, now we can get to the good stuff. This corner over here in my room is perfect for our RTGs. We can start to set out our lab. Only this time, bigger and better than ever. I hope. Look, I'm still kind of coping here, we could be honest. Can you blame me? I literally just got nuked. Okay. Step 1 to that bigger and better lab is getting more cables. With them, we can get all of the RTGs running into the pile. Now we can run some cables in a network out of the output side of the pile where we can add all of our machines. In the end, we did manage to salvage 3 manufactories, 2 alloy furnaces, a separator, and a partridge in a pear tree. By the way, quick side note, what's a partridge? Like, I'm assuming it's supposed to be some kind of bird, but also isn't a partridge like a letter? Like, I know I've never seen a partridge bird in real life. Anyway, sorry. I should be more worried about the radiation spiking. I'm heading back to the old base to reclaim anything that I can. I get the solar panels and a few crops, but this isn't the real reason I came here. I have to rush back to the surface and try to find it. But it's taking a long time. Where is it? There it is, the multi-tool. I worked too hard for this. I'm not just going to leave it behind. Unlike my mom with my old Nintendo 64, I'm not leaving this at my old place. While it's definitely good news that we did manage to find this, it's not so great news to see our radiation levels. They're starting to get dangerously high. Sure enough, we now have weakness from our radiation poisoning. We're not going to be able to fight any mobs that spawn down here. The pile is set up, and the lab is working, which is a good thing. We're going to need it after all. So, before we go full feral ghoul here, my next priority is that I'm going to have to rush some rat away. Something that I've definitely made a lot in the past. But for all you new viewers, I'll take you through it step by step. Step 1 is, well, we have to go down into the Nether. I take a second here, and I channel my inner dream, and I try to make a portal without mining any of the obsidian. I do manage to get it to work the first try. Speaking of getting it to work on my first try, I also managed to hatch some eggs into chickens. And this is kind of a big deal here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get those other test subjects, other chickens, back down from the other base. Soon, we turn a chili pepper into some seed. I guess our chickens like spicy food just as much as I do, because they quickly follow me into their new temporary little pen. With that tiny little side quest now out of the way, we can get our flint and steel. And now we're ready to head into the Nether. I don't know why. Whenever I go into the Nether, I always imagine it being like super hot and like sweaty and sticky. Just, downright disgusting. Kind of like Florida. Like it's got a smell of sulfur and rotten eggs, right? Also the Nether too. Still, this would be a big upgrade for my own personal BO, so I guess it's not that bad. I don't want to be here for too long though. I just grab what I need. Netherrack, a little bit of glowstone, and a few more quartz too. The smell is starting to get to me, so I head back to the surface. And then, it happens. I see my radiation spike all over again. Soon I realize that what's happened is the Nether portal has connected with the original Nether portal at the surface. Every time we go into the Nether, we'll be spit out in the irradiated end of the world side. And I run back as quickly as possible, but honestly, it's too late. Now, we've incurred mining fatigue. I can barely get around underground now. We're gonna need Radaway more than ever. Speaking of which, let's begin. First, we're gonna need to make a melter. For this, we need 3 nether bricks, which is the reason we went down to the Nether. Next, we're gonna need some steel and some lead. Yes, the melter is yet another machine that sucks down our steel alloy. But it's okay, because we've been making some steel and some tough alloy. So the melter isn't really too big of a problem. But once we get it crafted up, the real problem is, what are we going to melt in it? Sugar, and I don't really have any way to get any. I spend my first emeralds and I make the marketplace. Even with all the crops I've collected, unfortunately, we didn't manage to get any sugarcane down here. And I surely do not have the health to go back to the surface to try to get any. Now, our only hope is Harvestcraft, and it's agave. Oh, and I guess I take a detour to get some tea, of course. All of my fellow tequila and bad habit enjoyers will know that agave makes a fine sugar source. All we have to do now is grow some, meaning this will be our official first crop of the bunker, our first bunker farm. And unfortunately, it isn't too impressive, I must say. If it isn't already painfully obvious from how I made this farm, I am super desperate down here. I just need to grow whatever I can as fast as I can. However, with the help of some very crucial bone meal, we do get a decent start on our sad little farm here. Now that we actually have some agave, I can safely turn all of this into sugar. Is what I would have done if I wasn't panicking and losing my mind. Instead, what I actually did was accidentally turn them all into more seeds. Okay, now I know I've made some mistakes from time to time, but this one really hurts. I do manage to pull a little trick here. I harvest up all the planted agave and replace it with the seeds I just made, so we do have some agave crops. Now I put them inside of this pot to get sugar, which is what I should have done before. Now we can throw all the sugar into our melter and give it some time to cook. In the meantime though, let's not sit still. We have to move on to our next machine, the chemical reactor. This is a super common machine used in a lot of mid-game stuff in Nuclearcraft, and luckily it's not too complicated to build. However, it does take some steel, lead, and of course, tough alloy. Only one problem: we don't have enough steel. In order to make more steel, we need more coal. And with mining fatigue, this is a real problem. We have to sit down here and mine for like ever. And if any mob attacks us, remember, we can't fight it. It takes way too long, and this is super dangerous. And remember, this is just coal we're mining after all. That's how bad radiation poisoning can be. Oh, and don't forget, this isn't even the worst part of radiation poisoning yet. I don't even want to think about that right now. I'm just glad we finally have our chemical reactor. Now, we can combine that molten sugar from the melter with some water. Luckily, Nuclearcraft has an easy infinite water source block that we can make and stick right on the side of this reactor. Soon, we have our carbon dioxide, which is not so great, but more importantly, our ethanol, speaking of those bad habits. Next, we have to add some glowing mushroom to the ethanol inside of a fluid enricher, another mid-level machine that shouldn't be too hard to make. Then again, with radiation poisoning, nothing is easy. Luckily, I have all the iron, copper, and steel that we're going to need, and soon we have this machine as well. Luckily, we are getting pretty close now. I still have to add one more machine, so for now, I decide to move the enricher over to this side of the lab, where it will mix the ethanol with the glowing mushrooms. I just don't know if we actually have enough glowing mushrooms. For now, these first 6 will just have to do as we move on to our final machine, the fluid infuser. This will package the RadAway fluid into the bioplastic to make an IV bag of RadAway. Only, of course, there is another problem. Each RadAway packet needs 2 plastic, and we only have 1. Nothing in Nuclearcraft can ever be easy. Once again, we're going to have to head back into the Nether to teleport back to our old base. The rads are really dangerous now, and every second of this exposure really counts against us. To be honest with you guys, the entire playthrough is being decided by each small decision that I make right here. Every single second counts. The worst part of all, I can't find the sugarcane. The clock is ticking here. I finally head down into the lower bunker, and there it is. With all the crops, I finally see the sugarcane. Now, I just hope it isn't too late. I run back, deeper toward the new base, as the rad bar starts to turn red. We could be only seconds from dying. We need this to work, and we need it to work right now. We need bioplastic. We need RadAway. Now, with the second piece of plastic in the infuser, I can't do anything. I have to just sit here and hope I'm not too late. No more mistakes. I hope I did everything right. And there. Yeah. What was I panicking about? Yeah, of course I did everything right. I suck down this RadAway like your dad sucks down Diet Cokes, but I was never really worried to begin with. No. Now, being serious, we still only had that 1 pack. It's definitely a good thing that we had that, but we'll need to make more. Luckily, all of my symptoms are now gone. I can mine and fight once more. And so, of course, like I do, I celebrate by heading out to do another quick mine run, where I grab just any resources I can. I'm just glad to be alive and mining once more. Speaking of valuable resources, I turn this lava lake into a flat area where I can set down some dirt. I was smart enough to grab some saplings from the surface when I could, and now we're going to be able to start our very own underground orchard with cherry wood. But I don't stop there. I'm so happy to have survived that whole ordeal that I decide to work on keeping myself alive as I start to set out a much better farm. Now, I'll admit, I haven't been doing very much building. I've been way too busy, not dying, but no matter what, I always will take a little extra time to make my farm just a little bit nicer. Some dark red cherry logs as a border are a must. If I ever skip this, then you know I'm in real trouble. The radiation is still dangerous, and I know more horrible events are still coming. However, taking just a second to work on our farm reminds me the whole reason I play Minecraft in the first place. And it reminds me of just how lucky I am to have my loyal viewers like you guys. I know I always say this, like every playthrough, I seem to be repeating myself, but honestly, every time I'm making one of these videos for YouTube, like every step of the way, whether I'm playing and recording my gameplay or editing, or like literally right now as I'm recording this voiceover, I'm always thinking about you guys, always thinking about my viewers, and always thinking about how can I make the content just a little bit better for you guys, because you definitely deserve it. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you guys, and seriously, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love you guys, and I definitely can't help but tell you it. Now, I definitely do not love the radiation back at the old base here. I run back here to grab all the crops I can, but even this quick little trip gets my radiation bar back into a dangerous place. I just hope that my new little sugarcane farm will help me keep on making more RadAway, because it's very obvious to me that we're going to need it. I take a second to make sure the production line is still running smoothly and get another packet to enjoy. All that being said though, I think that this setup is going pretty well. And for now, I think it will keep us alive. I will admit, it is a little scary to think that if this RadAway production goes offline, then so will we. But for now, It's a lifesaver, and I love it. The only thing that we really need to work on is bone mealing up these mushrooms, turning them into glowing mushrooms, and keeping the production line going. Now, let's move on to the important things. After all, what's the point of living if you can't have your tea? Green tea is still king. I will die on that hill. However, we can use our market to get an orange tree. We can use it to make Earl Grey, which will knock out our veggies and our fruit in nutrition. Luckily, we already have an orchard going, so this new tropical add-on should be no problem. I do grab our first orange, and I set out a patch of all these new tea leaves. But I'm not done there. We can still do our green tea if we add some spice leaves as well. But those recipes are all a repeat from older videos. Let's see if we can get a brand new recipe that I've never done before. Orange chicken. Perfect. I mean, we already have the oranges, and the chickens, and the sugar. Now, we just have to plant some rice, which we've already collected, and a little bit of broccoli too. Perfect. See? All that frantic crop collecting on day 18 really paid off. At the start of day 27, we do get a bit of bad news though. In the orchard, I try to combine 3 oranges with a sapling to make an orange tree sapling. I thought this was how you made orange tree saplings, and I was kinda right. Only problem is it doesn't seem to work with the biomes of plenty trees like our cherry trees. And our second problem, when I cut down the orange tree hoping to get saplings from this, it didn't give us any jungle saplings, which means we went from 1 orange tree to none. Yeah, not exactly progress. Luckily, the market can help us out here. Now we can get some spruce saplings. After growing a few of these, not only do we have spruce trees, which is pretty nice, we also get more orange trees, and all of this worked out perfectly. Now, we just have to get the rest of our crops growing too. I decide I'm also going to add some jute to the mix as well. Now, this stuff isn't edible, but we can use it to make string, which is honestly worth downloading HarvestCraft all by itself there if you ask me. Next up, we do reward all this hard work in the farms with, yeah, you guys already know, green tea. It truly heals the soul, boys. Yes, I know Earl Grey is technically the optimal drink to have here. I don't care. Love my green tea. I also love the way the little steam clouds look there. Kind of ridiculous, but I like it. And we can still get our protein in too by boiling some eggs. It's nothing different than scrambling them. I just thought I'd mix it up a little bit this time. But finally, let's get to the thing that we've all been waiting for. Let's make our orange chicken. I still have to wait for our chickies to grow up, and in the meantime, I work on the oranges, and I do decide to make some Earl Grey. Finally, we now have all of our ingredients for our orange chicken, except rice. Yeah, some of you guys may have been paying attention carefully there. You might have noticed that the rice crop in HarvestCraft looks exactly like oats. Turns out, I was really growing oats instead of rice this entire time. No orange chicken today. That's fine though. Every Captain playthrough needs a little bit of oatmeal, so I'm not even mad. The market will get us our rice, as well as also getting us some soybeans. Down underground, or out in outer space, wherever cows are limited, it's important to get some dairy somehow. And soybeans are a great way to do this. So adding them to our farm is a must. With the soybeans and the rice plots all set out, finally, we have our well-deserved orange chicken. An amazing dish that gets every single nutrient, except for dairy. That's coming soon. Don't worry about that. For now, with full bellies and an amazing little farm, it's time to get back to the lab. With our RadAway and all of our food, we now have the most immediate threats out of our way, so we can get back to our technology progression. While I really want to work towards our reactor, I have to take a slight detour here. I need to collect as much uranium as I can, so I head out for another super big mega mining run. Our uranium fever has built all the way into a terminal disease as we spend days collecting these shiny, angry rocks, until our bone marrow starts to itch. But our reward is coming back on day 29 and starting to double up all of that said uranium. And some more good news. Our battery still has a decent amount of power. With it, we can start to use the separator to get all that uranium processed. Now, with 9,238, you already guessed it, we can craft up another RTG. Now, I know I said I was going to try to get like 50 of these RTGs, but yeah, I lied. I lie a lot. It's my way of hiding spoilers, I think. While I don't think I'm going to get 50 of these RTGs, still, I'm going to spend a lot of time in the middle part of these 300 days trying to get as many of them as I can, and using our power efficiently to get all of our reactor parts. And since we are playing around with so much radiation, I guess it probably would be a good idea to look into getting some hazmat gear. This takes heavy shielding, and heavy shielding takes materials that are only accessible with a rock crusher. Sadly, at the moment, we still don't really have enough power to run a rock crusher, so now comes the not so fun part of this playthrough. I grabbed some orange chicken to do a little bit more mining, mostly to get magnesium. I'm going to need all this for the next step of my plan, which I hope doesn't go horribly wrong. See, I'm going to be using this bright pink magnesium and start to craft it into a block so that I can make an advanced pile. The only thing that slows us down in this process is lead. And yes, take note of this. Shortage of lead will be a reoccurring problem for us for sure. One of the reasons why is we need it to make our RTGs, which are 100% my top priority no matter what else I'm doing. Not to mention the fact that we need a ton of lead if we want to make both of our reactors. But we have just enough to craft up a basic pile. Unfortunately, this will just not be enough for my next plan. I keep on processing lead to get a total of 3 basic piles. Now we can combine them to get an advanced pile. If we can get more lead, that is. Like seriously, I'm trying to rush through this as much as I can, but getting all of this lead is an absolute grind at this point. Quick side note, if you guys decide to go and play Nuclearcraft, if you see lead, mine it and hold on to it. Trust me. By day 31, we do have enough lead and tough alloy to make our big, powerful, advanced pile. Of course, the word powerful might not quite be right. Now, we have to craft up some more cables and grab those solar panels. But what in the world could I be doing with solar panels deep underground like this? Yeah, that's right, guys. We're actually headed back to the surface. Right away, I see 2 bad omens. 1, the chickens in this pen have all died. But 2 is that it's nighttime. This is my first time ever coming to the surface at night, and I gotta be honest, I had completely forgotten why you never visit a wasteland at night. Feral ghouls. These things are super fast, they're powerful, and they're highly radioactive. Not to mention, these things can jump. They easily jump over the moat, and they rush me, pushing me back down into the bunker. Even when the gap has 2 blocks wide, they still charge right over it and start to deal some pretty major damage and intense radiation damage. Honestly, for now, I kind of have to give up here. The night is just too dangerous for us. I'll take a slight detour and instead do a little bit more mining to kill time until daylight. Slowly, start to poke my head out and make sure that I'm safe. I think I am. I sneak out and quickly set out my worst idea yet, as I get a small power grid set up here. All the solar panels, with my advanced pile underneath these, should be able to collect a decent amount of solar power, even if I can't be up here while it's being collected. Now the question is, will this be worth it? Will taking a radiation bath every time I want to come back and harvest this pile be worth the RF? Before it gets too late, let's get out of here. This might be a terrible idea. Can you blame me? When we get back down to our base, look at this power. Our battery is dead, and we need every RF we can get. The RTGs definitely help, but they just aren't enough. On the bright side, we have 2 things working for us. We're totally safe down here from the ghouls. Number 2, the Earl Grey actually tastes pretty good. Now, it would be even better if I could put a little bit of milk in it. get my dairy up as well. But no, Harvestcraft doesn't let you add milk to your tea. Too much of a purist, I guess. However, Harvestcraft does let you make a machine called a presser, and if you put your soybeans in it, you should get silken tofu. If you put that silken tofu in again, you should get some soy milk. Finally, we have some real dairy here. With this, a huge portion of our menu in Harvestcraft becomes available. I can even mix soy milk with salt to get cheese. Then we can mix some silken tofu with salt to get butter. Soon, we have all the ingredients we need for a grilled cheese. And grilled cheese will never be bad to me. No matter how old I get, it will always bring me joy. But this next part here, yeah, not so much joy. One day has passed, so let's go see just how much power our solar panels have managed to collect. 250 kilo RF. I mean, that's definitely something, but honestly, this is definitely not our answer. We need to be making more power and pump out even more RTGs. That little bit of power injection, I'm not even totally sure it's worth the radiation, so maybe we should be looking into getting some more shielding against it. I get into the hazmat gear, which will need some sulfur and beryllium, both of which we can get from a rock crusher. No more delays. Finally, we're going to craft it up and get it down at the bottom of our lab and powered. Kinda. We need to get even more power in this thing to get it running, so we're going to have to head back to the surface. Only now, it's nighttime. I move as fast as I can, but still, the ghouls are too fast. They swarm. I can only spend a few seconds in the horde. I have to run away. And back down in the lab, we get the power diverting into the machines, and yeah, I mean, it's something, I guess, but I mean, it's not even enough to really fill up our machines. Still, we have no choice. We're gonna have to push forward with what we've got. Once I see that it's daytime again, I run back to the surface to get the solar panels charging again. And all the while, I am just tanking the radiation. Now, hopefully, it's time to change that. So, first things first, we get some diorite. Then we also grab some granite. The granite in the rock crusher will help us make some sulfur, which we need a lot of. The good news is, while we were working on crushing that, we managed to get 2 more RTGs. While those help give us more power, and the machines keep us moving, it's a good time to do a short mining run. And by short, of course, I mean I stay down here for a whole 2 days, collecting as much uranium as I can. You think TikTok will rot your brain? Wait till your blood plasma starts melting. Either way, at the end of those 2 days, most of the granite has been crushed, and now we have some sulfur. Time to put the diorite in, but then again, all of this is not why you came to see this video. Trust me, it's not what I want to see either. A man sadly struggling with RTGs for 100 days? No. Finally, I start to craft up the first of my fission reactor casing. This is the outer shell of the solid fuel nuclear reactor. I start to dig out behind my lab, because soon this will be our reactor room of the bunker. It's not too much yet, but trust me, this room right here is going to be where all the magic happens. And it starts right here. I set down the first block of our reactor, which will be a footprint that is about 7 blocks wide. But at the same time, don't let me clickbait you here too much. But we still have a lot of work to do. And yes, it does have to do with getting even more lead. I can still use my vanilla furnace to cook up some of the lead dust, which will use less power. And every RTG that we add gets us a little bit closer to the reactor. Still, it would be faster to get the solar energy. So I make a day cycle compass. And once I see that it's safe, I can go up to the surface once more. My compass lets me know that the night has just started, so I'm hoping I can get all the solar power before the ghouls come crawling out. And sadly, only one of these things was true. We fight our way back home, and we get the RF into the machines. We do get a burst of production from all this RF, and with it, we manage to make another RTG. But it's short-lived, and soon our base is back to 0 RF. I do manage to make a few more pieces of the reactor casing, but I know we'll probably need to stay focused on making more RTGs first. For the next few days, I keep on going back and forth. Whenever I have enough uranium-238, I make another RTG. Then, if I don't have enough uranium, I use all the lead and the graphite to continue my work on the reactor. Working like this might seem a little tedious, and it's definitely true that if I were to use Mekanisms generators like I normally do in every video, I would be able to bypass all of these days of work in just a few minutes. But honestly, this is just way more rewarding to me, genuinely. Working just a little harder and planning everything out a little more meticulously, building all these crazy infrastructure, and slowly getting more and more RF is what I love most about tech mods. And it's all starting to finally pay off. We have an entire floor for the reactor done. And finally, we're getting to a true tipping point with all of our RTGs. We have enough of them so that now we can make about 4 or 5 RTGs a day. I do run up for another heroic dash to the surface and grab that pile again. Now, on day 39, I plug it in, and combined with all the RTGs, we're finally getting a small reservoir of power here, which is good. We're gonna need it. At this point, we need all the help we can get. A true nuclear apocalypse brings many, many dangers. The radiation and the first blast wave could kill most of the life in the first hours, sure. But it's the fallout that really brings the danger. 20 days after the explosion, and we don't yet have a true nuclear winter. But instead, I eat some beets to protect myself from the radiation. But it turns out, we have another problem. Once I get up to the surface, I see that it's nighttime. The worst time to be up here, right? I decide for now, I'm going to come back here in daylight to avoid all the ghouls. Or at least, that's what I was thinking. For now, I head back down and start to collect a ton more RTGs. I now have a pretty impressive wall of them, and the power that they're producing really helps me build even more of my reactor. By the end of day 40, we have this 7x8x4 blueprint for this reactor that's really taking shape. By day 41, there's only good news for me. I start to make some sand, which I can get by putting stone in the manufactory. Then we're going to cook this into glass. And by day 42, I do a small mining run to collect all the materials to finish the outside of my reactor. Soon, we're already getting the top in place, and most of the reactor is already done. Well, at least the outside part. This might be the most resource intensive, but it is the most simple. It's the inside of the reactor that takes planning and precision. For example, nowhere is this more true than with the heat sinks. A lot of tough alloy needed here to be sure. But more importantly, we need to make sure that we have the right heat sinks and put them in the right place in the reactor, starting with our 12 iron heat sinks. All these heat sinks are used to cool off the reactor and offset the heat produced by the fuel cells. Oh, speaking of, we're going to need to make zircoli to produce those fuel cells. Good news is, once you have a rock crusher, that's pretty easy work. Cells are crafted in a pack of 4, so normally, when I design a reactor, I always try to design it in multiples of 4. And yes, that goes for this reactor as well. Since they are the core component of our spicy little box here, let's set these out first. They're going to touch the very far sides of the reactor, then leave a gap of 2 blocks in between each cell, with a total of 3 long lies. Did I describe that right? Does that make any sense? Anyway, you can definitely visually see it much better. Okay, so what goes in these gaps that we've left here in between the cells? Reactors need moderator blocks to connect and activate the critical reaction in the reactor. Because our fuel cells will be filled with such highly enriched fuel, we only need graphite blocks, the simplest moderators. Oh, and speaking of going critical, we head up to the surface again, and I plan to grab the solar energy, which should be easy, right? Blindness, nausea, oh, and of course, I've burst into flames. Setting out into the sunlight now has even worse effects than if I were to walk into lava. Turns out, Day 40's big event was making the sun a deadly laser. Ghouls at night, and now burning up in the sun in the day. All of this with the radiation constantly going the entire time. Now, how am I supposed to actually get any of the solar energy recovered back to my base? Waiting until the night and being eaten alive by ghouls, somehow, I think, is the better option here. Yes, that is how this playthrough is going right now. You heard me correctly. Now, I'm obviously pretty brokenhearted by this. The truth is, the logical thing to do here is to commit even more to staying down in my bunker. This is the much better way to proceed now. The radiation is much lower down here, my hearts look great thanks to my nutrition, and the lab is really coming along pretty well. So, while the surface might be getting worse and worse, the bunker life just keeps getting better. So let's keep on living in it as we make our next set of heat sinks. Lithium, one of the best, definitely one of my favorites anyway. So, after we have all the graphite blocks in place, connecting all the fuel cells, we need to think about activating them with the neutron primers. In order to craft up our neutron primers, we're going to need to make a decay hastener. And in order to make that, you need 2 eyes of Ender. Now, honestly, in my opinion, this is a little part of Nuclearcraft that kind of sucks. Like, think about this. If this was your first time ever playing Nuclearcraft and you came to this part and you didn't have your eyes of Ender, you'd have to stop everything you're doing and go look and hunt Enderman. Boo, Tom. Why do you gotta do this to us? I thought you loved us. Dad? Well, since I'm a vet and Tom has already broken my heart in the past, I made sure to collect 2 eyes of Ender before any of this even happened, so it doesn't totally break my heart. Much. Now that we have the decay hastener, we just have to wait for like 3 days or so for the uranium to decay into radium. Tom, please, why? Please stop punishing us for playing your mod. However, just like the first time my dad ruined my life, I have to just suck it up and move on, and I keep making my heat sinks. 6 gold, 4 water, and now lead. So many lead. And yes, of course, once again, we have run out of lead. So we're heading out on another mining run to grab some more. Soon, the lead is cooking, and my IQ is dropping. But I still have something fun to look forward to. Lapis heat sinks. Now this one here might actually be my favorite. We have 4 of these, which is good, but sadly we have 0 RF in our lab. Without any of that solar energy, we are right back to the tough struggles here. We're only able to make 3 copper heat sinks, and we're gonna need 4. To get the last one, we're gonna need some more RF, which means we're headed back to the surface. So I run out at night, and I set the pile down in place. But the more I have to deal with running around and avoiding ghouls, I have to say, the more I really want this reactor to be done. Finally, the last copper heatsink is done. So, yay. But we only have 6 lead heatsinks, and sadly, that's not even close to what we need. And yes, once again, your boy is back in the mines, desperately looking for even more lead. We do craft up a total of 8 heatsinks, which still isn't quite enough. But even though we don't have all the internal components, I can't stop myself anymore. I want to get started on building this reactor. First with the copper. This always goes off into the corners like this, so we can then put the lapis on top of them. Lapis coolers are pretty strong, and all they need is to be touching a fuel cell and the outside of the reactor, so they are pretty easy. Not quite like the iron heat sinks, which go in next. They're the weakest heat sinks in Nuclearcraft, but their real purpose is to set up the lead heat sinks, which aren't much stronger, but the lead heat sinks set up the lithium heat sinks, one of the strongest heat sinks in this reactor. Also, 2 iron heat sinks in a line like this set up the gold heat sink, another pretty strong sink. Speaking of setup, the water heat sink down here underneath the cells is what activates the copper. Now onto the core of the reactor. We have these iron set underneath the graphite with gold in the middle. Then in the dead center, we can add more iron and more gold on the top layer, with lead on the sides and lithium in the dead center down here at the bottom of the core. The combo of iron, lead, gold, and lithium is a classic and pretty easy setup for your basic reactor. If this is your very first time playing Nuclearcraft, give these heatsinks a try. I believe in you, kid. We get a bit more iron and gold at the center top, then the last graphite. Finally, we can add another iron and gold combo to finish everything off. However, do not stop the video right here and recreate this reactor yourself. Trust me, at the risk of putting a spoiler right here, you do not want to run this exact same reactor yourself. Anyways, just keep watching. We'll find out if this works, or not. But for now, let's craft up the controller. This bad boy is set down in the dead center. It's how we'll analyze the effectiveness of the reactor. Next, we need vents to get water in and steam out of this spicy boy. In the meantime, we finally have cooked up our radium, and now we can make our primers. These need to be set on top of your fuel cells so that they will activate them and make the reaction go critical. We put these here on a diagonal, and this setup should work. Sure enough, once the very last piece of casing is in place, the reactor comes to life. And you can also tell it's working because when you click on the controller like this, you get to see all of these stats. Perfect. Well, almost perfect. In reality, this reactor setup is probably only about halfway done. We're definitely going to need to add a ton more details. And the first little detail is we're going to have to add pipes, tubes, and cables. To make all these, once again, we're going to be using Mekanisms. So we're going to be making our very first metallurgic infuser. I do love me some Mekanisms, so I'm actually pretty excited about this. Still though, remember, the more machines that we add to our lab, the more power we're going to demand, so we definitely have to use these sparingly. First, we drop some redstone and iron to make infused alloy, which is a good start, but we still have a ways to go, including turning this osmium into a computer chip. 2 computer chips are what we need to make an enrichment chamber, so we can get a little bit more use out of our redstone and our coal. By enriching coal in the enrichment chamber, we can now use it to make steel 8 times more efficiently. And we really need a lot of steel for the next project. By putting the enriched coal in the infuser, we can add iron and get all that steel started. Some of the steel we're already going to use to make basic pipes, which will move around steam and water, but they'll do it pretty slowly. So upgrading them to advanced is good, but I'm going to upgrade them to elite. But before I get too worried about any of that, first, we need to start working on our turbine. Yes, this is Overhaul after all. You guys didn't forget that we were going to have to make a turbine, did you? So of course, like always, we're going to have to take rhodochrosite, which you can get from granite in a rock crusher, and cook it up 3 times. Once to get manganese oxide, then again to get these manganese bars, then again to just get straight up manganese. You'll know that you've done everything right once you get these light purple bars. Finally, you just have to crush them up, then add some graphite dust to them to make the carbon manganese blend. We do all this so that we can now add 15 bars of iron to finally start making our turbine steel. Now, why do we have to go through this insanely long process just to make basically steel? Because Nuclearcraft, that's why. Stop asking questions. So now we have our turbine steel, or high strength, low alloy steel. Now with this, and yes, of course, a ton of tough alloy and more steel, we get some of the turbine components started. Starting with the controller. Then, in combination with a ton more tough alloy and a ton more steel, we can start to get the casing going. If it isn't already pretty obvious, this is very expensive, so crafting up all of this is going to be our life for a while. However, if I'm being honest, I have a confession to make. I love this. I love making turbines. I know it's not as fun as OG Nuclearcraft, where you don't have to make the turbine. You can simply make the solid-state reactor and pull RF straight out of it. Me personally, I much prefer the more realistic turbine-reactor combination. And again, I don't think it's too hard. All we have to do now is make some bearings, where we can then run the rotary shaft down the middle, which isn't too expensive. Next, we can add the coils, which are so much simpler than setting up the heat sinks in the reactor. For me, I'm just going to be using 4 magnesium coils, 4 copper, and 6 beryllium. But first, we have run out of HSLA again. So we head to the alloy furnace once more. In the meantime, we get our diamonds in the infuser, and we can craft up our logitubes. Logitubes help you move solid items, which means these will help pull fresh fuel and put them in the reactor and draw out the spent waste as well. They can be basic, they don't need to be upgraded, they're no big deal here. Oh, and I guess this probably would be a good time to make the fuel ports as well. Fuel ports are made out of the same zircaloy alloy, just like the fuel cells were. Luckily, we have a little bit left over. These go right here, with the chests connected to move the fuel in and waste out. Speaking of moving fuel and waste in and out, let's make some fuel for our face. Now that we've gotten a ton of soy milk, we can make some pancakes, I guess. Okay, I'm not trying to hate on all of my soy milk enjoyers, but like, really? Soy milk pancakes? Nah, man, that's too much for me. Give me my straight up cow juice any day. Either way, with our bellies filled up with our soy boy femboy pancakes, we can head out for another mining run. For what else but more lead. Finally, back at base, we get enough lead and steel to make our last beryllium coils, and soon the copper ones too. But we're still going to have to figure out how to get steam in and out of the turbine too. Now we craft up the inlets and the outlets. They're going to have to be considered in our coil design, sadly. But hey, on the bright side, I think we're almost done here. Now we just need to fill out the inside of the turbine. No need for any complex heat sink shenaniganery here. All we need is 16 steel blades. So yes, more steel. Surprise, surprise. But we're close enough now. We carve out some space right behind the first reactor and start to set down all of our casing. The turbine again is much simpler, only needing to be 5 by 7 by 5 in its blueprint. Then we slap an outlet on this side and an inlet right here facing the reactor vent. The coils are set out as so. The mags go on the north and south sides, with the coppers going on the east and west sides. The beryllium will be filling in the corners. And yes, it really is that simple. Like I said, it's not like the heat sinks at all. We just need to set the bearing at the very middle with the shaft running all the way down. No surprises here. Finally, we just need to add more steel blades all the way surrounding the shaft. While the steel is cooking up to make those, we get our very first reinforced diamond alloy. We can use this to make our elite pipes. By day 53, we're back into the mines. This time it's to get iron, because those steel blades are just sucking all of it right out of our reserves. And soon we do have enough steel blades and the turbine casing to complete the entire turbine. Yes, it does take like 4 whole days by itself, and it does completely drain all of my power. But again, it just reinforces why we need this reactor and turbine so much. Finally, by day 56, I decide I'm going to do something about it. I have another plan, and it requires me finishing the hazmat suit that I've been trying to make so many days back. Now that we have our rock crusher running along, we have plenty of beryllium and sulfur. We can get all the materials we need to make more heavy shielding. We do still need some hard carbon, but that's not too tough. And in no time at all, we get our first heavy shielding out of 9. Yes, I said 9. 99999. Sorry, didn't mean to let out my inner German there, but yeah, we do in fact need 9 pieces of this super expensive heavy radiation shielding. No wonder I gave up on it back on day 35. We do have some good news here. With our second piece of shielding, we can get our first piece of the hazmat gear. But hey, there's more bad news too, because the boots need black dye, and yeah, with no squids down here underground, we just can't get that. At least not in this 100 days. But that doesn't mean I'm gonna give up. See, I think I remember seeing some flowers growing down here. Sure enough, after looking around a little bit, we do find some daisies for yellow dye. And this keeps the dream alive. This, combined with the ability to turn rotten flesh into leather in a manufactory, means we can make a leather cap. Finally, we can get our first piece of hazmat gear. Our microrads instantly drops down to 1. Yeah, I'll definitely take that. With this big boost in our radiation protection, we can easily head up top, into the radiation, and get those solar piles back. The ghouls don't irradiate us too much, but sadly, our hazmat suit is not as strong as the tough alloy armor, and we're going to take a lot more damage. Like seriously, this might be even more dangerous than before, so we just have to kind of run away here. Oh, look at that. Those perverts, they ripped off my pants. Guys, I'm a Minecraft YouTuber. I think I'm supposed to be the creepy one here. Chill. I can't worry about that too much right now, because now we got a boost of 5 million RF. With it, we can continue to turn our jute into string, and turn that string into woven cotton, another amazing perk of Harvestcraft. We can use it to make leather pants, and soon I won't be running around with my butt out anymore. First, we're going to have to crush up some more sulfur. And we can do this a little faster now, since we can make some speed upgrades, now that we have all that extra power. Because of that, in no time, we have 2 more heavy shields. And that means we'll be getting our next piece of hazmat gear, our pants. In order to beat this nuclear heat, I tried to find some hazmat shorts, but sadly, no good. Oh well, these pants will have to do. Unfortunately, I can't celebrate for too long, because now I want to get my chest plate, the most powerful piece of hazmat protection, and it takes 3 shields. Ugh. After another day slaving away over a hot lab, we finally get another heavy shield. Now we only need 2 more, right? Actually no, I have a different plan here. I craft up a new set of tough alloy boots and put the heavy shielding in these instead. Now these are not as good as the hazmat boots that I originally wanted, but it's definitely better than going out in flip-flops. This does mean that we're right back to needing another total of 3 heavy shields. So this is going to take some time, and I start by grabbing some granite to crush up in the rock crusher. And of course, getting our sugarcane in the manufactory so we can get even more delicious micro bioplastic in our blood. Yum. It did take a few days and a lot of patience, which is tough for me, but eventually we managed to craft up another piece of heavy shielding. Eventually, with some more sulfur, lead, and uranium, we get our first full 3 pieces of heavy shielding. Now, a hazmat chestplate is easy, and once I slap it on, I gotta say, I'm rocking it pretty well. Out of all the armor I see on all those thumbnails, the neon bright yellow hazmat suit gotta be my favorite. But the question is, will it be strong enough? Of course, it can never be easy. Within seconds of poking my head back out on the surface on day 60, I already see what the next big apocalyptic event is. A literal army of feral ghouls are waiting for me just outside. The new hazmat suit protects me from radiation, but it's super weak armor compared to the tough alloy. And I have no choice but to run from the tidal wave of monsters rushing in at me. I may never be able to go back to the surface, there's just too many of them. They've broken through. They've pushed down into this first bunker. Now I'm running even deeper in the caves with these feral ghouls close behind. I managed to get back to my base, but now I have to be careful. There could be feral ghouls anywhere, even down here on the lower levels now. But once again, while the surface gets worse and worse and worse, the bunker gets better and better, because now I have the last piece I need to finish up our amazing turbine. The second that the last block is in place, the inside of the turbine completely transforms, and it looks so amazing. Now, we just have to get all of our cables, tubes, and pipes connected and in the right place. We do start to add some zirconium to our uranium, but more importantly, the next step is making elite universal cables. These are strong enough and should be able to carry all of the RF from this reactor. With this, the reactor and turbine are now connected. Time to get water added to this whole system. And once again, we can rely on Nuclearcraft's infinite water sources. And once again, we are stuck because this thing requires so much lead. Not to mention, we will need a lot of these water sources. The most basic one only produces about a bucket every 5 seconds. As you can see here, it's just too slow. So for right now, I stash all my components in this chest, clearing out my inventory, and I head back into the mines to grab all the lead we can. Of course, I'm not going to say no to some uranium as well. After all, this stuff is going to be critical, no pun intended, and we're going to get the best use out of it yet. With all this lead, we can now craft up even more water sources, 8 to be exact, and when combined with just 1 piece of bronze, we can make a compact water source. This water block produces water 8 times faster than the normal source, obviously, but even that will not be enough. We have to farm up even more lead, craft up even more water sources, and now we have 2 compact water sources. But still, I want to be extra safe and make even more. Unfortunately, I just can't sit here and continue to make water sources. I'm only human, you guys, and I'm gonna be real, I just got bored. So I'll admit I decided to switch over here. Instead, I'm gonna start to craft up our piles. With all the RF produced by this reactor so quickly, we are absolutely going to need a large storage for all of this power. So we craft up another advanced pile and add that to the back of the turbine right here. Now we connect all the coils to the pile with our elite cables just like this. Like I said, it's going to be a lot of RF. So just to be careful here, let's do a second advanced pile and add that to the other side of the turbine as well. Finally, we get to this part right here. We're now adding levers to the turbine and the neutron primers on the reactor. And this means we're getting really close. Now, we need one last key machine to keep this entire thing from exploding. We add sand to the manufactory to get silicone, then combine that with graphite to get our silicone carbide. With this, we can make our universal bin. In my next 100 days in this bunker, I will absolutely be using this exhaust steam to be making even more RF. But for now, it is a waste product, and if we let it build up, it will explode the turbine. So we're gonna have to delete it with the universal bin. With that done, we have our final step. I take the uranium-238 zirconium and I combined it with the uranium-235 zirconium. The recipe goes 3 pieces of 235 to 6 pieces of 238, which creates our highly enriched uranium zirconium fuel. Very quickly, we craft up some more elite cables. We're going to be running all of the power from the 2 advanced piles on the turbine through the reactor room on the roof and connect it over to the lab by plugging it all in. As I start to get the last of these cables in place and check to make sure that everything is perfect here, I'm honestly shaking here. I'm super excited and I got to admit a little bit nervous. We're finally going to get to go critical and turn on our first nuclear reactor. Because we have 4 cells in this design, we need 4 pellets, and soon the reactor will come to life. Don't forget, we still need just a little more water. I craft up the last compact water source and add it to the reactor, and finally, we should be ready. We add in our first 4 pellets, and just like that, at the tip of my fingers, I now have the power of nothing. Okay, sorry about that. Seriously, I didn't mean to tease you this time. Like, I genuinely was fooled too. I thought this was gonna work. This is a letdown for both of us, I promise you. The thing is, it turns out, I still had to use a Mekanisms configurer to set up all the logi tubes to make sure that they fed in the fuel and pulled out the waste. I told you guys, there are so many small details to make this work. Even I forget to do this, and I'm a pro with Nuclearcraft. For real. Finally, this time, I think we're ready to go. I put in my first pellets, and the control panel here starts to glow green. We have criticality, and the nuclear fuel is now burning, and our nuclear reactor has come to life. In fact, it may be coming to life a little too much. I don't know why we have 200 extra heat being produced. That definitely shouldn't be there, and I'm gonna have to figure that out. To be honest though, for now, I was a little too excited. I finally get to see the turbine spinning, and the power flowing through my batteries. Once I see those blades going around, it's over. I can't think of anything else but just how happy I am to finally have done it. We are now producing power in such huge amounts, I never need to return to the surface ever again. We're officially self-sufficient in our power production. I am still a little worried about our reactor though. It is slowly overheating, but for now, everything is working perfectly. Soon, I see that those 4 pellets we put in have managed to create about 11 million RF. This is insane, and it's a massive boost to our lab for sure. It is truly incomparable to what we were working with before. With this, we can now start to add a ton of speed upgrades and begin to produce double whatever materials we want. We don't have to be selective now. A nuclear reactor completely changes the game and unlocks the true power of Nuclearcraft. No pun intended for that one either. Although Nuclearcraft is an amazing mod, it's mostly aimed at producing power, whereas Mekanisms is the perfect mod to use all that power. Because of that, we're now focusing on making a ton of infused alloys as well as reinforced alloys. With these, we'll start to build some new machines that will now have enough power to produce any materials we could want. However, all that being said, with all these machines running and all these speed upgrades installed, we do eventually find the limits of our power. But this is a good thing though. I was stress testing the system here to see just how much power we could get out of our 4 pellets. Adding another 4 pellets gets the reactor going again, and we have no problems at all. Now, we can move right on to our next big phase of our bunker production, which involves upgrading some of our Mekanisms machines. Starting with our smelter, which we quickly upgrade into a smelting factory. That means it lets us cook up to 3 items at the same time. But we're definitely not stopping there. We quickly use our redstone to make infused alloys and our diamonds to make reinforced alloys. And in no time at all, we've upgraded our smelter to an advanced smelter, then an elite smelting factory. An elite smelting factory can smelt up to 8 different items all at once, much faster than some vanilla furnace. And once we have all these speed upgrades, it will be a true game changer. Of course, like I always do, I add the classic double chest down here at the bottom to hold the insane amount of riches we will now be producing. And I now start to throw stacks of resources, like this iron, to quickly fill up this brand new chest. As amazing as this is, and it is amazing, it's only the first half, and we quickly upgrade our enricher to an elite enricher as well. We attach the double chest to the top time the side, and connect it with a pipe here. Now, we have our classic setup. It goes as follows. The top chest will be filled up with whatever ores we want processed. The enricher will then double them, 8 items at a time. The smelter will then cook them up, 8 items at a time. So now, to celebrate and use our new advanced nuclear-powered laboratory, we do a massive mining run. And I do mean massive. A 3-day massive mining run. Now, we simply take all of our ores and set them in the chest. Now we're done. The machines will do the rest of the work for us. All we have to do for our part is to continue to add pellets to our reactor. Easy, right? Couldn't go wrong, right? Yeah, of course. The second I was feeling good about myself, it all comes crashing down. Our reactor has had a partial meltdown, and the 200 heat has finally built up and melted some of our fuel cells. The radiation is quickly climbing, and every second this elephant's foot of corium is exposed, the radiation levels in the reactor room will start to spike. My rad suit is the only thing protecting me and keeping that Geiger counter low. Otherwise, I would have been dead long ago. To be honest, I'm still not safe. I quickly have to collect all the corium and try to repair the reactor before the radiation spills out and completely poisons my bunker, killing all my crops and my chickens. At one point, the liquid corium spills out and almost instantly kills me, but I do manage to avoid it, just barely. I kinda got lucky there. And speaking of lucky, I can't be the only one who thinks that these radiation levels are actually pretty tame. A nuclear meltdown is usually a lot worse than this. I get the last cells in place and remove the last bit of corium, with my radiation levels only being in the 100 nanorads. Not good, but not too bad. Still, I'm not taking many chances here, as I quickly run all this corium up to the surface and set it out here in the wasteland with the rest of the radioactive landscape. Oh, and yes, I did totally forget that the sun was going to melt our face immediately, and I caught on fire here. The most dangerous part of our reactor melting down is weirdly coming back to the surface and getting lit on fire. Or at least, that's what I thought at the time. Once I sit down the corium and walk away, I'm feeling pretty confident in myself. I felt that I got off easy there, and I didn't have to deal with too much blowback from that meltdown. Speaking of getting off easy, I was able to quickly assess and figure out what was wrong with this reactor, causing it to overheat. I realized that I accidentally put too many iron heat sinks, and 3 of those should have been magnesium heat sinks instead. Magnesium heat sinks simply need to touch a moderator block and the outside of the reactor, and they're pretty strong for that too. Adding these and taking out a couple of the iron one upgrades the cooling of the reactor, and it should fix our problems going forward in the future. Although I would quickly find out that that small overheating was the least of our problems. As I put in the next set of fuel, the reactor comes to life, and for some reason, now is when it jets out all of that radiation. My Geiger counter spikes up into the red as I'm hit with over 100 millirads, even with my rad suit on. My reactor room, my home, is now more radioactive than the surface above me. Remember, I'm wearing the full-blown hazmat suit. If I wasn't, the only thing left in this reactor room would be a glowing skeleton. Kind of like these poor, sad chickens right here. Honestly, I might be joining them soon if I can't figure out how to clean up my bunker from all this radiation. And this time, I'm not running away from my problem. I'm not going to abandon this bunker for a 3rd time and try to relocate my base again. From now on, I'm going to solve this problem. I'm going to face it head on. I'm feeling heroic and brave, but then again, maybe this is just the radiation poisoning talking. Step 2 is to look into a new machine that is insanely expensive, but at this point, insanely necessary. Radiation scrubbers. The first problem with radiation scrubbers is it's made out of elite panels. To make these, you have to produce calcium sulfate, and that is not an easy task. Starting off with a melter. Simple enough. I place this on top of the lab and immediately fill it with sulfur, which is the beginning of a very, very long process. The next part of the process will involve adding chemical reactors. Yes, multiple. For now, we need at least 2, which we can add side by side. Now, we have to figure out the truly annoying part of adding oxygen to both of these chemical reactors. To do this, we make an electrolyzer, then we add a water source on top of it. Now that we've added this to the lab and the water source, it will start to fill up with water. The electrolyzer will separate the hydrogen and the oxygen molecules out of the H2O. But still, all this might look pretty easy, right? What's the big deal? One word. Power consumption. That's the big deal. Oh, wait a minute. No, I guess that's 2 words? Anyway, the point is, this thing sucks down RF like no other machine. The electrolyzer takes forever to produce the smallest amount of oxygen. This means producing elite panels takes a lot of time, which we just can't afford. So we're gonna have to figure out some sort of solution, and fast. Meanwhile, since we do have some time to kill, we add 2 more chemical reactors. Yes, that's right. This process requires 4 chemical reactors in a line. It is just that ridiculous. We add tubes to the electrolyzer, and the first 2 chemical reactors are set up to the electrolyzer and now drawing oxygen. At the same time, we have to be somewhat careful here and manage the hydrogen. We don't want it leaking into any of the chemical reactors, so we have to safely vent it away. While that part is a little annoying, at least for me, the next part is pretty easy. We just add a fluid enricher where we'll mix fluoride and water. I get a little brave. I do decide to add some speed upgrades to the electrolyzer after all. Just like I was afraid, this really does chew through our uranium pretty quickly. But as frustrating and nerve-wracking as this setup is, I can't really be too upset because it looks like it's actually working. The molten sulfur is combining with oxygen in the first reactor to get sulfur dioxide, then combining in the second reactor to make sulfur trioxide. In the third chemical reactor, we add water to the sulfur trioxide to make sulfuric acid. Sounds nice. And now we can combine the sulfuric acid with the fluoride water in the fourth chemical reactor. If this sounds complicated, it is. In fact, it is one of the most complicated things to do in Nuclearcraft so far. But the good news is, we've almost got it figured out. All we need to do now is craft up a crystallizer, which will turn the calcium sulfate solution into a powder that we can use. Oh, and did I mention, you're also going to have to figure out what to do with all this leftover hydrofluoric acid. Yeah, my bad. Sometimes I just forget about the insanely dangerous byproducts of all my work here. Whoops. I'll deal with this stuff later. For right now, I go out to grab some obsidian and crush it up. Also, I crush up some quartz as well. With this and some gold pressure plates, we can now craft up energy upgrades. When combined with speed upgrades, they will negate some of the exponential energy consumption that speed upgrades cause you to incur. We add as many as we possibly can to our electrolyzer. We're still going to need to cook up a ton of uranium fuel in order to feed this thing. The bad news is, every time I step into the reactor room, the radiation levels do spike. The good news is, we finally have our first 4 pieces of calcium sulfate. With this, we are one step closer to making our crystal binder, which is what you need to make those elite panels. And while that's going great, I did not forget about the hydrofluoric acid. I quickly craft up some reinforced alloy to make an elite tank. But since this stuff is so particularly spicy, I decided to be a little extra careful, and I used refined obsidian to craft up some atomic alloy, which we can use to make an ultimate bucket, which holds 112 buckets of fluid. I placed this tank and some pipes directly above my head and the whole lab. I'm pretty sure OSHA wouldn't approve of that, but for now, I think I have to do this. I want to collect the hydrofluoric acid because I'm pretty sure that I'm going to need it for something later. In the meantime, I have a much bigger problem that I have to worry about. Borax. And of course, to make borax, it takes a setup of machines that are just as complicated as making the calcium sulfate. I'm honestly a little bit stressed out here. I can't really deal with this right now, so I decide to clear my head, and I do a little mining run here before attempting this massive task. The good news is, when I get back to my base and unload my inventory, we do get a decent amount of calcium sulfate finished. We now drop a few more pellets into the reactor just to keep her warm. Then we're going to move on to our next project. I decide to craft up another elite tank, but this time it's a gas canister. Just like the hydrofluoric acid, I think it'll be a good idea to save up some of our hydrogen as well. I'm definitely sure that we're going to need this later too. Speaking of needing this later, we're actually going to need this machine setup to start work on our borax. This means we're going to have to clear out all the sulfur first, so I start to add a huge influx of energy and speed upgrades to all the machines. For now, I'm distributing them pretty evenly, but if there's any areas that are starting to lag behind, I will add a few more upgrades to speed them up. Soon, once all the sulfur is clear, I can start to add boron to the melter instead. Now, instead of oxygen, we will be adding hydrogen into those chemical reactors. Doing this produces our first diboran. As you can see right here, this time we need 1 fewer chemical reactors, so I just take one out and remove it. In its place, I put a pipe to pump the diboran right into the chemical reactor to be combined with water. The last bit of sulfuric acid is being combined with the fluoride water. Soon, this area will be ready for the diboran. That diboran and some water combined, they actually make a byproduct of hydrogen. Soon, we have boronic acid. Now we just have to combine that with sodium fluoride solution, which you can get by putting volliamite in a manufactory. We take out the last bit of calcium sulfate. Finally, we're getting our first little bits of boronic solution in the crystallizer. The bad news is this process produces more hydrofluoric acid as a byproduct. But the good news is we have our first little pile of borax. Now we just need to do all this 3 more times. So now maybe you can see why it's tough to make the radiation scrubber. A radiation scrubber would be useful in any Nuclearcraft playthrough, but you have to put in a lot of work to add just one to your lab. So I decided to take a little break and make myself a delicious chicken sandwich. This is my way of honoring all those poor chickens that we lost in the last meltdown. If it makes you feel any better, they're delicious. Kind of have this taste of like a gritty metal to them. I like it. A quick break to do some mining, and we're back in the lab just in time to make our osmium compressor. Once we add some refined obsidian dust and some osmium to this, we can make bars of refined obsidian. With this, and a bunch of atomic alloy, diamonds, golds, and a bunch of other expensive materials, we can finally craft up the digital miner. My loyal viewers will already know, but to all the newcomers here, this is a top-tier, amazing Mekanisms machine. It takes a ton of power, but it can automatically mine any ores you want. The good news is, we have all the power we could possibly want. The bad news is, we still have to program this to get any of the specific ores that we want. I do have some boron ore, so that'll be the first thing that the digital miner will collect for us. Mining up more boron means we can get more borax, after we've run it through this entire setup. We use all of this calcium sulfate, which we worked so hard to get. We can now make our crystal binder. We get about 40 crystal binder, and now we should make a decent amount of elite panels. We do struggle a little bit here, and at first I can only get 3. I was pretty heartbroken, but I find out that it's not the crystal binder's fault, and pretty quickly we can manage to get our 4 elite panels. We're getting close now. We just have to get some extreme alloy by combining hard carbon and tough alloy, and soon we can combine all this with the borax. Finally, we have our first radiation scrubber. Of course, I decide to set it directly in the middle of the reactor room. You want to set these as much as you can out in open air, and now that this thing has power, all we have to do is add a solution to absorb the radiation. You can use borax, but I think we're actually going to do a little bit better, and we're going to be using some of our radaway solution instead. It does take some time, but slowly, by day 81, I can see that the rads go from 800 down to 700, and eventually even start to go down into the 600s too. With our hazmat suit, radaway, and now this radiation scrubber, we have some decent control over the intense radiation in this world. All of these fun little toys were definitely pretty difficult to make, and they took a lot of time and a lot of knowledge to figure out, but they are well worth it in the end. To be honest with you guys, I finally feel like I'm actually safe in my own world for the very first time. In fact, I finally feel safe enough to start building the grand finale of this 100 days. Using some of the molybdenum that we got by recycling the nuclear waste from our first reactor, we can now create the controller for our molten salt reactor. This new material, combined with more elite panels, also lets us make our 4 fuel vessels, which is a molten salt reactor's version of fuel cells. Now, we just need to make the coolant vessels, which is just like the heat sinks from the solid-state reactor, only they're made out of elite panels, extreme alloy, and thermoconducting material. This is why the molten salt reactor is something you should definitely be building after your first solid-state reactor. This is an intensely expensive machine, and also it can be pretty complicated and difficult to learn how to build. Now, I'd like to say that that's okay and that everything's going to be alright like it has been for all my other builds, but honestly, I kind of have no idea what I'm doing here. Remember, this is the first time I've ever done this in this version of Nuclearcraft. But still, I'm going to try, starting by making the eutectic NAC solution. Once again, this requires a complicated array of machines all set up in the right way with the right materials. Step 1 is getting more of that sodium fluoride. Then we also need some potassium fluoride, which you can get by putting carbonite in the manufactory. But that is just the beginning of all the work that has to be done. First, let's create the thermoconducting alloy by melting some boron and some arsenic. Start by crafting up 2 melters. Then I just add them over here in this new area of the lab. This little extension here of the lab is where we'll be putting all of our machines necessary to build and to run the molten salt reactor. Once the arsenic and the boron are melting, we can mix them in this chemical reactor. Then we simply put them in an ingot former to create a small crystal of boron arsenide. And yes, that was by far the easiest part. The bad news is the complicated stuff is still coming up. But there is some good news. I can hear outside that the new event that's happening on day 80 is a nuclear hurricane. Now, how's that good news? These would be the most devastating things you could ever imagine. But, luckily, we still get to just imagine them, because we're safe down here in the bunker. At least I think. Either way, let's blindly hope that we're safe and continue our work by getting 2 fluid enrichers filled with water. Now, let's add the potassium to the top enricher and the sodium on the bottom one. Next, we move the solutions into a chemical reactor where we're going to be adding water once again. We do this both on the top and the bottom. Also, we add a crystallizer next in line. Once again, one for the top and one for the bottom. While this is complicated, the good thing is both of these machines will pretty much be mirroring each other, making it a little more simple. After the crystallizer, the 4th machine in the lineup is a melter once again, one on top and one on bottom. The next machine will be an electrolyzer, 2 of these, once again, one on top and one on bottom. But finally, after all this, the one last machine goes right in the middle in the entire lineup. It's the fluid mixer, which will be mixing the outcome of all these machines together. In the end, the molten sodium and the molten potassium will mix right here. Finally, we're actually getting pretty close here. We just need one more melter and one final fluid mixer. The melter will melt down whichever type of coolant we're using. In our reactor, our design is going to call for some good old lapis. And luckily, with our digital miner, we have plenty of it. Also, we finally have enough of that boron arsenide, and we can combine it with extreme alloy to get the thermal conducting alloy. Now, all we can do is just wait for all the eutectic knack to be made, which really means we're going to be adding a ton of speed and energy upgrades to this entire process, making as much potassium and as much sodium as possible. But quickly, we've already made our first little bit of the eutectic knack. Once we combine it with the molten lapis, we finally get our lapis eutectic knack, which will be our coolant used in the molten salt reactor. And now that we have our thermoconducting alloy, we can make the lapis eutectic knack ports for the reactor as well. Next up, we can also make the fission fuel vessel ports, which will allow us to move in the molten salt fuel and pull out the waste. That reminds me, we also still have to make the molten salt fuel for this reactor as well. And I will admit, I do something that might be considered cheating right here. You can make heavy water in Nuclearcraft, but I actually haven't personally learned how to do it yet. In the meantime, I'm going to use a Mekanisms filter on a Mekanisms water pump to help me with this instead. Soon, our Mekanisms pump is quickly making some heavy water, which we'll be using to make a moderator block for our reactor. We're going to be piping the heavy water into the fluid infuser, where it will be pumped into an empty frame to make that moderator block. And remember, I'm using Mekanisms here. This is the easy way to do this. I told you the molten salt reactor was going to be complicated. Now, all that being said, there is one saving grace to the molten salt reactor that might let us finish this within the next 13 days. In the older version of Nuclearcraft, they forced you to make the molten salt reactor casing out of elite panels. In this brand new, far more viable version of Nuclearcraft, we can make the casing, the biggest part of any reactor, out of the same casing we use for the first solid-state reactor. This costs steel and lead and tough alloy, but at least we don't have to make stacks of elite panels. That would have taken another 100 days all by itself. With some sheet metal laid down on the ground in the back of our cave, I start to set out the very first pieces of our molten salt reactor. Now, for my solid-state reactor, I actually used a piece of third-party software which helped me plan the entire thing out, and yet I still managed to get that wrong. And I do not have that software to help me build and plan the molten salt reactor, so you can imagine just how dangerous it'll be for me to basically completely wing this design from scratch. But hey, what's the worst that could happen, right? Let's at least try to get started. We're going to make this reactor 2 blocks tall, then we're going to place the cells over in the 4 corners, kind of like the first reactor. But the 4 cells will be spread out a little more. Longwise, they'll be 4 blocks apart, and widthwise, they'll be 3 blocks apart. Connecting all of these cells will be heavy water moderator blocks. For now, I start to add all the ports to get the fuel in and out, then I add the coolant port facing towards the coolant production, and the coolant outlet facing deeper into the bunker. You'll see why soon. Using our thermal conducting alloy and 4 elite panels, we can make our coolant blocks. Luckily, they come out in a batch of 8, and for this reactor, we're only going to need 8. Just like in the solid state reactor, the lapis coolant heaters need to touch the fuel cell and the casing, making them very easy to set up just like this. Since this is my first time making a molten salt reactor in, I guess, 2 years, I've made it much more simple. The complicated part about this molten salt reactor is actually making all of the components themselves. The reactor is now done, and I'm pretty proud of it, but I do want to warn you right up front here. This design is definitely not finished, and we'll be doing a lot of modifications before we get this running, so do not copy this. For example, I'm even changing the fuel that will be going into this reactor. Speaking of, we craft up an electrolyzer, because we're going to get ready to process our molten salt fuels. We add another 2 chemical reactors next up in the line. Then set up 2 melters off to the side here. In the first one, we put lithium, and in the second, beryllium. The idea behind this system is that we're going to be running that hydrofluoric acid, which we've been saving up, into the electrolyzer. I wasn't lying to you guys. I told you we'd need that. This will create fluorine, which we will then add in the chemical reactors to both the molten beryllium and the molten lithium. In fact, I'm actually going to add a second electrolyzer to speed up the fluorine production. Finally, we add another melter, and in this one, we're going to be melting up the thorium-bred uranium. Or at least that's what I thought. In the overhaul version of Nuclearcraft, you have to irradiate your thorium inside of a reactor. I completely forgot about that. Yet another reason why overhaul is just that much harder. Luckily though, I'm not too easily deterred. I actually have a backup plan. Now, we're going to be making some lowly enriched 235, which is still uranium based, and it will go in the melter instead. Of course, we are going to have to modify the molten salt reactor to accommodate for this new fuel type. We're going to need even more fluorine from the electrolyzer, which we pump over here and combined with the molten LEU fuel now. Now, finally, in our last fluid mixer, we're mixing a combination of the lithium and boron with the molten LEU fuel to make molten FLIBE salt solution of lowly enriched uranium-235 fluoride fuel. Yes, that is actually the name of this stuff. I swear, Tom made this intentionally complicated on purpose. And while I'm definitely glad to be getting the fuel for our molten salt reactor, I'm starting to run into a problem with our old solid fuel reactor. We're running out. Now, it doesn't matter if we hit day 96, the real challenge is trying to get the molten salt reactor running before we run out of fuel for the solid fuel reactor. We only have 10 pellets left. Good news is, we're actually almost done with the fuel, coolant, and reactor. Which is good news, right? Well, we still have one entirely new machine to craft up, which I've never done before. I don't know if we'll be able to finish this in time. The heat exchanger requires extreme alloy and thermoconducting alloy. It is pretty expensive. However, if I'm smart about this, I can get this done and make it fairly small. It might not be that efficient, but we're desperate here, and we're going to have to be resourceful. Even deeper back in the bunker, we now lay out the beginnings of this heat exchanger. Luckily, it only has to be 1 block by 1 block thick. We'll make it 8 blocks long, and this should still decently work for us. We place a fluid input at the far end at the top of the heat exchanger, then place a fluid outlet at the other end at the bottom. These two, combined with the fluid inlet facing towards the reactor and the fluid outlet facing all the way at the end of the tube, should work. But like I said, this reactor has an entirely different fuel, and therefore we'll have to do a complete redesign here on day 97. Finally, we do add the thermoconducting alloy heat exchanger tubes down the middle of the heat exchanger. Using our multi-tool, we can set this up very carefully so that it will be pulling the eutectic knack from the reactor that run it all the way down this heat exchanger tube. This is almost done. And we might just have saved ourselves here. But we've officially run out of fuel. I scrounge around for any uranium I can find, and I craft up the last few pellets of solid-state fuel. If these run out, we will fail the 100-day challenge. We only have a few pellets and a few days left. Heat exchanger is done, and I think this should be working now. I just have to fill it up with water. I borrow one of the compact water sources from the old reactor and put it on the top of the fuel inlet in the back of the heat exchanger. Now I'm doing some quick back-of-the-napkin math here, trying to calculate our molten salt reactor with beryllium blocks as moderator blocks instead of the heavy water blocks. This should work. And speaking of should work, the idea is the molten salt reactor will heat up the eutectic NAC using nuclear fission, then the eutectic NAC will go into the heat exchanger, where it will counterflow against the water. This will superheat the water into high-pressure steam in massive quantities, which will then be used in the turbine to make far more power than the solid-state reactor ever could. In theory, all of our problems in these first 100 days will be completely solved right here. But seriously, I do mean in theory. This is a completely untested reactor design. I've never built this before, using this eutectic NAC that I've never used before, with a fuel I've never used before, all of this going into the heat exchanger, which I've never built before, and again, all of this was last minute rushed, using minimal power and resources and time. Not exactly ideal for nuclear reactor construction, I would say, but what choice do we have? Finally, we connect the reactor to the heat exchanger with a pipe to pull the hot eutectic NAC in. Then once it's cool, we can use this pipe to bring it all the way back into the reactor to be reused. We then also run our ultimate pipes down underneath the reactor room, where they're connected to the bottom of the heat exchanger and putting the steam into the turbine. If there is one saving grace of this whole system here, it's that we can reuse this same turbine and draw steam from both the molten salt and solid fuel reactors at the same time. Now, I think that we're ready. And we're going to have to be, because we've officially run out of fuel. I had some tanks to hold the molten salt and pull out the waste quickly and make one last desperate play. I don't have enough 235 to make more solid fuel, so instead I'm going to try to make LEU zirconium fuel and put it in the reactor instead. But because it only has graphite inside, the lowly enriched uranium simply isn't strong enough to go critical, which means our old reactor is now completely bricked. This forces me to do maybe the most painful thing I've done in this entire playthrough. I'm gonna have to kill my beloved reactor, completely offlining my entire bunker and my life support system. I'm cannibalizing the reactor to take the neutron primers and move them over to the new molten salt reactor. No matter what, now we're running off of the molten salt power, whether we like it or not. This is the moment of truth. I have no backup plan or safety net. Dozens of variables that are untested, and I really have no idea what's about to happen here. But I have no choice. And to be honest, no matter how this 100 days ends, I also have no regrets. I wanted to start up this playthrough to build the molten salt reactor. And if I can't do that, then there's no point to any of this, really. So no more stalling. No more waiting. Let's do this. The good news is, the eutectic NAC is looking great. We have over 11 buckets of it, which should be well more than enough. We take all this coolant and add it to the molten salt reactor first. Next up, the biggest unknown variable, the makeshift LEU molten salt fuel. We have about 4 buckets of this, which should be enough to get the reactor to go critical. We switch on our primers and get ready to add the fuel. No going back from here. Sure enough, somehow, all this crazy back-of-the-napkin math actually worked. The molten salt reactor springs to life, and it is hyper inefficient. Most of the components in this reactor aren't even functional. It's slightly overcooling by 32 heat, and it is not optimal at all with a huge sparsity debuff. It's one of the worst reactor designs I've ever seen, but it doesn't matter because it's actually working. And now it's heating up the eutectic NAC. And the heat exchanger, which I had no idea if this was going to work either, is now making about 12 millibuckets of steam, which again is pretty terrible, super inefficient by itself. The reactor is super weak, heat exchanger is pathetic, and even with all this rush design and horrible work, the entire setup still manages to produce 5,000 RF per tick. Just this alone has more than twice the power of the solid-state reactor. For now, for just today, here on day 100, we've saved ourselves, our bunker, and our very hopes of survival. It is one of the weakest reactors I've ever made, but we still managed to produce our salvation. However, we obviously have so much more work to do here. We need to upgrade this reactor to make it a proper Captain's Standard reactor, and, of course, we need to build up our farms, all of our machines in our lab, and obviously, we need to build up the very bunker itself and make it a build worthy of surviving for the next 100 years. So our next 100 days in this bunker will be filled with even more mayhem, but even more amazing achievements. Well, I guess you'll just have to wait to see that. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and genuinely, if you guys want to see me continue to work on this bunker and build it all out in another 100 days, let me know, because I'd really like to continue this build and make it truly self-sustaining. So let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that. Either way, I love you guys, and thank you for watching.